The sky above Keller Prime turned black at exactly noon. Ambassador Sora. Choi stood at the window of the Galactic Union's Great Council Hall and watched death arrive. She had served humanity for 20 years in this place, speaking for a species that the galaxy considered too young, too violent, too dangerous to join their perfect civilization. Now she understood that none of it mattered. The Vrek had come, and everything the Union built over 3,000 years would. And today, the first bioships broke through the clouds like living nightmares. They were not machines. They were creatures, massive and terrible, with hulls made of dark organic matter that pulsed like beating hearts. Thousands of them filled the sky, blocking out the twin suns that had warmed this world for billions of years. Beside her, Elder Torim of the Neth watched with ancient eyes. He was the Union's greatest admiral, a being who had lived for 800 years and commanded fleets that numbered in the tens of thousands. His blue skin had turned pale. His 4 hands trembled at his sides. "We sent 40,000 ships against them at Novan Corridor," he said quietly. "They destroyed every single one in less than a day." "Dada!" Sora did not respond. She was recording everything on her personal device, preparing a message that she knew might be the last thing she ever sent. The Vrek had appeared 18 months ago from beyond the galactic rim, from a darkness that no species had ever explored. They came without warning, without communication, without mercy. They did not want resources or territory or slaves. They simply consumed. Every world they touched died. Every species they encountered was erased. 7 civilizations had already fallen. The proud Cathari, with their beautiful crystal cities. The wise Morath, who had mapped the stars before any other species learned to walk upright. The peaceful Denari, who had never known war in their entire history. All gone. All eaten by the swarm that now filled the sky above the Union's capital. The first weapon fired from the bioships. It was not a laser or a missile. It was a beam of pure biological matter, a stream of acid and parasites that struck the city's energy shields and began to eat through them like a living disease. Alarms screamed throughout the council hall. Beings of a dozen different species ran in panic, trying to reach evacuation ships that Sora knew would never escape. The Vrek were too fast. They were everywhere, and they never stopped. "You should go," Elder Torim said to her. "Your species is far from here. Perhaps they will have time to prepare." "Prepare for what? You had 3,000 years of peace. You had technology we cannot even understand. And you fell in 18 months? She looked at the old admiral with sad eyes. "What chance does Earth have?" Torim was silent for a long moment. Outside, the shields finally collapsed. The screaming began as Vrek landing pods crashed into the city streets, releasing swarms of smaller creatures that hunted everything that moved. "Your people are different," Torim finally said. "We always knew this. It is why we kept you isolated, why we never allowed you to join the Union. You are violent in ways that disturb us. You think of war in ways that we find uncomfortable. And yet war found you anyway. Yes." The elder's voice was heavy with regret. "Perhaps we were wrong about many things. Perhaps peace made us weak. Perhaps we forgot what it means to truly fight for survival." He placed one of his 4 hands on her shoulder. "Send your message, Ambassador. Warn your people, and tell them something for me." "What?" "Tell them that when the Vrek come for Earth, they should not try to be like us. They should not try to be civilized or merciful or elegant." His eyes met hers with an intensity she had never seen before. "Tell them to be exactly what we always feared they were. Tell them to be human." Sora nodded slowly. She understood. She activated her communication device and began recording as the world burned around her. "This message is for Earth Command. This is Ambassador Sora Choi, transmitting from Keller Prime. The Galactic Union has fallen. I repeat, the Union has fallen. The Vrek swarm cannot be stopped by any weapon the galaxy possesses. They cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be bribed or threatened or deceived. They consume everything in their path, and they are coming for you." She paused as an explosion shook the building. Part of the ceiling collapsed. Dust and debris filled the air. She could hear the clicking sounds of wrecked creatures climbing the walls outside. The Union's fleet numbered over 40,000 warships. The wreck destroyed them all. Their bioships regenerate faster than energy weapons can damage them. Their swarm tactics overwhelm any defensive formation. Every strategy the Union tried failed. Every weapon proved useless. Elder Torium had moved to the window. He was watching his world die with quiet dignity, accepting what could not be changed. "I do not know if humanity can survive what is coming," Sora continued. "But I know this. We are not like them. We never were. The Union called us primitive. They called us dangerous. They kept us isolated because they feared what we might become if we were allowed to grow." The doors behind her began to buckle. Something was trying to break through. She had only seconds left. Perhaps they were right to fear us. Perhaps the very things that made us outcasts in this galaxy are the things that might save us. I do not know. But I do know that we have never surrendered. We have never accepted extinction. And we have never stopped fighting, no matter how dark the night became. The doors exploded inward. Sora turned to face the creatures that poured through, her device still recording, still transmitting. They ravaged the galaxy. They destroyed everything the Union built. But they've never faced humanity. They have never faced a species that was born in war, that survived ice ages and plagues, and the fire of our own weapons. They do not know what we are. The last thing her recording captured was her voice, calm and clear despite everything. Show them what it means to make enemies of the human race. The transmission ended. Keller Prime fell. And across the galaxy, the scattered survivors of a dozen species fled before the swarm, racing toward a darkness that seemed to have no end. But in one small corner of the galaxy, on a blue world that the Union had always ignored, the message arrived. It played in the halls of governments. It echoed through military command centers. It was heard by billions of people who looked up at their night sky and understood that something terrible was coming, and deep beneath the mountains of Korea. In a facility that officially did not exist, a group of engineers and soldiers watched the message in silence. When it ended, they looked at each other with grim determination. "How long until the ship is ready?" one of them asked. 3 months, another replied. "I get 2. The work continued. The preparations accelerated, and humanity began to remember what it had always been. Beneath the thin layer of civilization, it wore like a mask. They were not the peaceful builders. The Union had wanted them to be. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors. Captain Kang Tae had buried his family 3 years ago. He remembered the day clearly. The Vrek's first scouts had reached the outer colonies, testing humanity's defenses, probing their weaknesses. His wife and 2 daughters had been on a transport ship returning from Mars when the attack came. The ship's distress signal lasted exactly 47 seconds, before it went silent forever. Now he stood in the Sol orbital station, looking through a massive observation window at something that made his heart stop. The ship was enormous. It hung in the darkness of space like a blade made of black metal, sharp and angular and brutal. There was nothing elegant about it. There was nothing beautiful. It was a weapon, pure and simple, designed for one purpose only. "Call it the HSS Iron Will," said General Myra Beak, the woman who had summoned him here. She was small and gray-haired, but her eyes were hard as stone. "We've been building it for 200 years. Tay turned to look at her. 200 years? That is impossible. We did not even know the Vrek existed until recently. We did not build it for the Vrek." The general walked closer to the window, her reflection ghostly against the stars. "We built it because the Galactic Union told us we were too dangerous to join them. They put a quarantine around our entire solar system. They watched us like animals in a cage. So we built a ship. We built the only ship we could afford to build. One vessel, designed to face any threat alone." She smiled without warmth. "The Union wanted to contain us. They wanted to keep us primitive and weak. Instead, they gave us 200 years to prepare for the worst enemy imaginable." Tay looked back at the ship. Its hull was covered in thick plates of some dark alloy. he did not recognize. Weapons bristled from every surface. Massive barrels that looked nothing like the elegant laser arrays he had seen in Union schematics. This ship did not fire beams of light. It fired metal. "Kinetic weapons," he said quietly. "We use kinetic weapons." The Union considered them barbaric. They stopped developing kinetic technology thousands of years ago. General Beak's smile grew wider. They also never developed any defenses against it. Why would they? No civilized species would use such primitive weapons. Tay understood now. The Union's energy shields were designed to absorb and deflect laser fire. They were useless against physical projectiles moving at extreme speeds. A single tungsten slug, accelerated to a fraction of light speed, would punch through any shield-like paper. "Want me to command this ship?" he said. It was not a question. "You're the best captain in our fleet. You have more combat experience than anyone else alive, and you have a personal reason to want the wreck destroyed." The general handed him a datapad. "Your crew has already been selected. The best officers Earth has to offer. All volunteers. All willing to die." Tay scrolled through the list. Lieutenant Una Park, tactical officer. Her record showed an unusual mind, someone who saw patterns where others saw chaos. Chief Engineer Ho-sung, 51 years old. The man who had designed the ship's experimental fusion core, Dr. Hannah Kim, science officer, who had spent the last year studying every piece of data about the wreck that surviving Union refugees had brought to Earth. Ensign Daewon. The youngest officer on the list, barely 23. Handling communications and navigation. "When do we leave?" Tay asked. 2 days. The wreck main swarm is moving toward the inner colonies of what used to be Union space. Millions of refugees are gathered at a place called the Vela system. If we do nothing, they will all die within the month. You want us to save them? With one ship? General Beak shook her head. "I want you to do what the entire Union fleet could not do. I want you to hurt the wreck. I want you to make them bleed. And I want the galaxy to see that humanity does not run from monsters." Tay closed his eyes. He thought of his wife's smile. He thought of his daughter's laughter. He thought of 47 seconds of screaming before silence. "I will need to meet my crew," he said. The crew assembled the next day in a briefing room aboard the Iron Will. They were 5 people, plus the 300 crew members who would operate the ship's systems. But these 5 would make the decisions that determined whether humanity lived or died. Lieutenant Una Park was younger than Tay expected. With sharp eyes that seemed to analyze everything around her, she spoke first. "I have studied every battle the Union fought against the wreck. I know why they lost." "Tell us," Tay said. "They fought like a civilization that had known peace for 3,000 years. They formed defensive lines. They tried to protect their fleets. They retreated when damaged." Park pulled up holographic displays showing Union battle formations. "The wreck are not soldiers. They are predators. They smell weakness. Every time the Union tried to defend, the wreck attacked harder. Every time they retreated, the wreck pursued." Chief Engineer Ho-sung grunted. He was an older man with gray hair and oil-stained hands, someone who clearly preferred machines to people. "So what do we do differently?" "We attack," Park said simply. "We never defend. We never retreat. We make the wreck fear us more than we fear them." Dr. Hannah Kim raised her hand. She was quiet, with gentle features that seemed wrong for a warship. "I have found something in my research. The wreck regenerates quickly, but not instantly. Their healing slows when they take massive damage all at once. And their hive mind connection has nodes, key ships that coordinate the others. If we destroy those nodes, the swarm becomes confused," Tay finished. "They lose coordination." "Exactly." Kim smiled nervously. "They have never faced an enemy who knew this. The Union never figured it out because they were too busy dying." Ensign Daewon sat quietly at the end of the table. He was young, almost too young for this mission. But when Tay looked at him, he saw no fear, only determination. "Do you have anything to add, Ensign?" Daewon nodded slowly. "I intercepted communications from Union refugees yesterday. They are talking about Earth. They pity us. They say we do not know what is coming. They think we will die like everyone else. Does that bother you? No, sir. The young man's jaw tightened. It makes me want to prove them wrong. Tay looked at his crew. These 5 people, and the 300 others who served with them, were Earth's only hope. One ship against a swarm that had devoured galaxies. One crew against an enemy that had never known defeat. It should have been terrifying. Instead, Tay felt something he had not felt since the day his family died. He felt alive. The Iron Will launches in 36 hours, he said. We will travel to the Velas system, where millions of refugees wait to die. We will engage the Vrek swarm, and we will show the galaxy what humanity is made of. He stood and looked each of them in the eye. The Union called us primitive. They called us violent. They kept us locked away because they feared what we might become. His voice hardened. They were right to be afraid. Now let us show the Vrek why. 36 hours later, the Iron Will launched from Earth's orbit. Billions of people watched it go, a single dark shape against the stars. Carrying all their hopes and fears into the void, the ship entered. Faster than light travel and vanished, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Vrek swarm continued its endless march of destruction, unaware that something different was coming for them, something that would not run, something that would not surrender. Something human. Elder Tareem had accepted death. He floated near the observation deck of Velas Station, watching the darkness of space with eyes that had seen too much. 2 million refugees crowded the station and the handful of damaged ships that surrounded it. They were the last survivors of a dozen species. The final remnants of a civilization that had stood for 3,000 years, and they were all going to die. The Vrek swarm was 3 days away. 300 bioships moving through space like a disease spreading through healthy tissue. There was no fleet left to stop them. There was no weapon that could hurt them. There was only waiting. A young Neth officer approached him. Her name was Kira, and she had served under him at the Battle of Novin Corridor. She was one of the few survivors of that massacre. Elder, we have detected something strange. Torium did not turn from the window. Strange how? A ship has just exited faster than light travel at the edge of the system. Kira hesitated. It is heading toward the Vrek swarm. Not away from it. Toward it. Now Torium turned. Show me. They moved to the command center. Frightened officers of multiple species monitored sensors that showed only doom approaching. Kira pointed to a small dot on the display. A single vessel moving at high speed toward the 300 Vrek bioships. We cannot identify the design, another officer said. It matches no known Union vessel. The whole composition is strange. Dense metal alloys. And the weapons. ... Double quotes. What about the weapons? They appear to be kinetic accelerators. Magnetic rails designed to fire solid projectiles. The officer shook his head in confusion. No civilized species has used such weapons in thousands of years. Torium felt something cold move through his chest. He remembered a conversation on Keller Prime, moments before the end. He remembered Ambassador Sora Choi and the message she had sent to her homeworld. Open a channel to that ship, he ordered. The communication screen flickered to life. A human face appeared, calm and weathered, with eyes that held no fear. Behind him, Torium could see a bridge crew working with quiet efficiency, preparing for battle. Unknown vessel. This is Elder Torium of the Neth. Speaking for the survivors of the Galactic Union, you are heading toward the Vrek swarm. You must change course immediately. There is no ship that can survive contact with that fleet. The human smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had made peace with death long ago. Elder Torium Ambassador Choi spoke of you before she died. She said you were wise. The human paused. My name is Captain Kong Tae of the HSS Iron Will. We received your distress signals 3 weeks ago. We have come to help. Torium stared at the screen. Help, with one ship. Captain, the Vrek destroyed our entire fleet. 40,000 vessels, the greatest armada the galaxy has ever assembled. What can one ship possibly do? Watch, Kong Tae said simply, and remember what you see. The communication ended. Torium turned to the main display where the single human ship continued its approach toward the enemy swarm. "He is insane," Kira whispered. "They are all insane." Torium said nothing. He watched as the distance between the human vessel and the wreck fleet grew smaller. Around him, 2 million refugees stopped what they were doing and gathered near every screen, every window, every sensor display. They all watched, expecting to witness another death, another failure, another moment of despair. The Iron Will reached weapons range. On the bridge of the human ship, Lieutenant Unipark's fingers danced across her tactical console. Enemy formation identified. 300 bioships. I have located 12 coordination nodes within the swarm. Marking targets now. Captain Tay sat in his command chair, his face expressionless. Dr. Kim began electronic warfare. Hana Kim activated her systems. Powerful jammers flooded every frequency the Verk used to communicate. The hive mind signal that connected the bioships together began to fragment, filled with static and interference. "They are confused," Kim reported. "Swarm cohesion is dropping." "Good." Tay looked at his tactical officer. "Lieutenant Park, fire at will." The first kinetic round left the ship at 1/10 the speed of light. It was a simple thing, just a slug of tungsten weighing 1 ton. But it moved faster than anything the Vrek had ever faced. It crossed the distance between the Iron Will and the lead bioship in less than a full second. The impact was catastrophic. The bioship did not regenerate. It did not absorb the blow. The kinetic energy transferred instantly, converting into heat and force that tore the organic vessel apart from the inside. The wrecked ship exploded in a spray of dark matter and burning flesh. On Vila Station, 2 million refugees watched in stunned silence. "What was that?" Kira breathed. Torium could not answer. He had no words for what he had just witnessed. The Iron Will fired again, and again, and again. Each shot found its target. Each impact destroyed a bioship completely. The Vrek tried to swarm, tried to surround the human vessel, tried to overwhelm it with numbers. But Park's targeting was too fast. She destroyed the coordination nodes first, breaking the swarm's ability to work together. Then she picked off the attackers one by one. The Vrek attempted to close distance, to use their organic weapons against the human ship, but the Iron Will's armor was unlike anything they had encountered. The acid sprays that had eaten through Union shields splashed harmlessly against thick metal plates. The parasite missiles that had infected Union crews shattered against hull sections designed to withstand direct nuclear strikes. Minutes after the battle began, it was over. 300 Verk bioships had become 300 clouds of debris spreading through space. Not one had escaped. Not one had survived. The Iron Will hung motionless among the wreckage, its dark hull scarred but unbroken. On Vila Station, the silence continued for a long moment. Then someone began to cheer. The sound spread through the station like wildfire. 2 million voices crying out in relief and disbelief, and something that felt almost like hope. Torium stood frozen, tears running down his ancient blue face. In 800 years of life, he had never seen anything like this. He had never imagined anything like this was possible. The communication screen flickered to life again. Captain Kong Tae's face reappeared, calm as before, as if he had not just done the impossible. "Elder Tarim, the immediate threat has been eliminated. We will remain in this system to protect the refugees while you organize evacuation to safer space." "Captain, I do not understand. How did you do this? Your weapons, your tactics, your ship? Nothing in the Union's arsenal could have achieved what you just did." "The Union relied on energy weapons," Tae replied. "They believed kinetic warfare was primitive and abandoned it long ago. The Vrek never developed defenses against something that no civilized species would use." His eyes hardened. "Humanity was never civilized, Elder. We were just waiting. Waiting for what? For something worth killing?" The screen went dark. Torium stood there, surrounded by the cheering survivors, trying to process what had happened. The galaxy had fallen. The greatest civilizations in history had been destroyed. And yet one ship, from a species the Union had dismissed as dangerous primitives, had just defeated a Vrek fleet in less than an hour. Kira appeared beside him again. Elder, what do we do now? Torium watched the iron will on the display, this strange human vessel that had emerged from the void like a nightmare made real. He thought about Ambassador Choi's last message, about her words regarding her species. We watch, he said slowly. We remember, and we pray to whatever gods still listen, that humanity remains our ally. He paused, then added quietly, because if they ever became our enemy, I do not think anything in this galaxy could stop them. Outside, the iron will turned toward deeper space, where more Vrek swarms waited. The hunt had begun. The iron will had been fighting for 6 weeks. Captain Kong Tae stood on the bridge, staring at tactical displays that showed damage reports across his ship. Hull breaches on 3 decks. Weapon systems operating at 60%. Ammunition reserves down to less than half. And his crew, the 300 men and women who had followed him into hell, were exhausted beyond measure. But the Vrek were dying. Word of the human ship had spread across the galaxy. Refugees whispered about it in their camps. Survivors told stories that grew larger with each telling. One ship, they said. One ship against the swarm that had devoured civilizations, and the ship kept winning. Tay did not feel like a winner. He felt tired. Lieutenant Unipark approached him, her face pale from lack of sleep. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. She had not left her tactical station for more than a few hours at a time since the campaign began. Captain, I have finished analyzing the hive mind signals we captured during the last battle. What did you find? Park pulled up a holographic display showing a complex web of communications between Vrek bioships. Their coordination is not random. It flows in one direction, from a central source. All the swarms, all the clusters we have been fighting, they are all connected to something larger. Dr. Hannah Kim joined them, looking equally exhausted. She had been studying Vrek biology without rest, searching for weaknesses that could give them an edge. I found the same thing in my research. The hive mind is not a network of equals. It has a hierarchy. At the top of that hierarchy, Quainte said quietly, there is a queen, Kim nodded. One central intelligence, controlling everything. The swarms are just extensions of her will. Kill the queen, and the entire species becomes mindless. The bioships would drift without purpose. The threat would end. Do we know where she is? Park manipulated the display, tracing the communication signals back through space. The lines converged at a single point, far beyond the edge of known space. The Vrek origin point. A massive organic structure at the galaxy's rim. And based on these readings, the Queen is protected by their remaining fleet. She paused. Over 10,000 bioships, Captain? Everything they have left. Tay looked at the display for a long moment. 10,000 ships. His vessel was damaged, his crew was tired, and his ammunition was running low. The logical thing would be to return to Earth, resupply, rebuild, but he knew what that would mean. The Vrek would regroup. The Queen would adapt. The swarms would learn from their defeats and develop new tactics. This was their only chance. This moment, right now, while the Vrek were still confused and scattered. How long to reach the origin point? He asked. 3 days at maximum speed, Park replied. Chief Engineer Ho-sung's voice crackled over the intercom. The old man sounded even more tired than the rest of them. Captain, if we push the engines to maximum for 3 days straight, there's a good chance the fusion core will fail. This ship was built for one major engagement, not a 6-week war. Can you keep it running? Silence. Then, I can try. But I make no promises. Tay turned to look at his bridge crew. Incenday Wan sat at the communications station, young face tight with exhaustion. The officers at weapons and navigation stations looked barely awake. These people had given everything for a mission that should have been impossible. I am not going to order anyone to continue, Tay said loudly enough for all to hear. We have already done more than anyone thought possible. We have killed thousands of wrecked ships. We have saved millions of refugees. If we return to Earth now, we would be welcomed as heroes. He paused, letting the words sink in. But if we return now, the Vrek will recover. The Queen will build new swarms. And in a year, maybe 2, they will come for Earth with everything they have. We will have traded one battle for another." His voice hardened. "I lost my family to these creatures. I do not intend to give them a chance to take anyone else's family. I am going to the origin point. I am going to kill their queen. Anyone who wants to come with me is welcome. Anyone who does not can take an escape pod now, and I will respect their choice." No one moved. Daewon spoke first, his young voice steady. "Sir, I joined this crew knowing I might die. That has not changed." Park nodded. "I have studied these creatures for months. I want to see their queen burn." Kim adjusted her glasses. "Scientifically speaking, this is the only logical course of action. The queen must be eliminated." Ho Sung's voice came over the intercom again. "Captain, I have spent 50 years building things. I would like to see my greatest creation do what it was built to do. I will keep this ship running if I have to hold the fusion core together with my bare hands." Tay looked around the bridge one more time. Every face showed fear. Every face also showed determination. "Set course for the Vrek origin point," he ordered. "Maximum speed." The iron will turn toward the darkness at the edge of the galaxy and began to accelerate. 3 days passed like 3 years. The ship groaned and shuddered as Ho Sung pushed the engines beyond their limits. Systems failed and were repaired. Crew members collapsed from exhaustion and were carried to their quarters by their comrades. Sleep came in stolen moments between alerts and repairs. Tay spent most of his time walking the ship, talking to his crew. He learned their names, their stories, their reasons for being here. A young woman from Busan who had lost her brother in the first Vrek attack. A middle-aged man from Seoul who simply wanted his children to grow up in a galaxy without monsters. An old soldier who had fought in a dozen smaller conflicts and wanted his final battle to mean something. They were not warriors by nature. They were engineers and scientists and technicians, ordinary people who had been asked to do something extraordinary. And they had answered on the 3rd day. The iron will dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Vrek. Origin System Tay stood on the bridge and looked at the display. What he saw nearly broke his courage. The origin point was not a planet. It was a structure, a living megastructure the size of a small moon. It pulsed with dark organic matter, covered in growths and tendrils that reached out into space like searching fingers, and surrounding it, filling the space between the structure and the stars, were the Vrek's remaining forces, 10,000 bioships. More than the Iron Will had faced in all its previous battles combined. "The Queen knows we are here," Kim said quietly. "I am detecting massive hive mind activity. She is calling everything to defend her." Park was already working at her tactical console. "I am plotting approach vectors. If we can reach the main structure, we would have to go through all of them," Daewon finished. "Every single ship." Tay looked at the display for a long moment. Then he sat down in his command chair and opened a channel to the entire ship.
Act.
"This is the captain speaking. You all knew this moment would come. You all knew the odds when you volunteered. What I see before us is every nightmare we ever imagined made real." He paused. "But I also see something else. I see an ending. Not our ending, their ending. We are going to fly into that swarm, and we are going to kill their queen. And we are going to show this galaxy that humanity does not surrender to monsters." He closed the channel and looked at his bridge crew. "All hands, battle stations. Lieutenant Park, you have tactical command. Chief Ho Sung, give me everything the engines have." The Iron Will surged forward, alone against 10,000 enemies, and the final battle began. The void exploded with fire. 10,000 Vrek bioships turned as one toward the Iron Will, their organic weapons charging, their swarm minds screaming with fury. The Queen's psychic presence filled the space around them like a weight pressing down on reality itself. She had never faced a true threat before. She had consumed worlds and civilizations without resistance. And now something small and metal and impossibly defiant was charging directly at her heart. She poured everything into its destruction. "Captain Kong." Tay gripped the arms of his command chair as the first wave of Vrek ships slammed into their formation. The ship shook violently. Alarm lights flashed across every console. Hull breach warnings screamed through the corridors. Kinetic batteries firing, Lieutenant Unipark reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. Targeting coordination nodes. First cluster breaking apart. The Iron Will's mass drivers roared, hurling tungsten slugs through space at devastating speed. Each hit destroyed a bioship instantly. But for every one that fell, a dozen more took its place. The swarm was endless. Hull integrity at 82%, Chief Engineer Ho Sung shouted over the intercom. "We are taking damage faster than I can repair it. Keep us moving," Tay ordered. "Do not stop for anything." The ship plunged deeper into the swarm. Vrek weapons tore into the hull. Acid streams melted through armor plates. Parasite missiles crashed against the outer sections, releasing creatures that tried to burrow inside. Crew members fought them with fire and emergency weapons. Dying at their posts to keep the ship alive, Dr. Hannah Kim watched her sensors through tears. "Captain, I am detecting 17 more coordination nodes between us and the Queen. If we can destroy them, the inner swarm will lose cohesion." "Park, you heard her. Prioritize those targets." "Already on it." The battle became a nightmare of fire and blood. The Iron Will pushed forward meter by meter, leaving a trail of destroyed bioships in its wake. But the cost was terrible. Entire decks were exposed to vacuum. Weapon systems failed and could not be repaired. The ammunition counters dropped toward zero. Ensign Day One's voice cut through the noise. "Captain, I am broadcasting on all frequencies. If any Union survivors are listening, they will know what we are doing." Tay nodded grimly. "Good. Let them remember." The ship broke through the outer swarm and entered the space around the Queen's structure. Here the bioships were thicker, their attacks more coordinated. The Queen herself was directing every movement, every assault, every attempt to stop the human vessel. A massive impact threw Tay from his chair. He hit the deck hard, tasting blood. When he looked up, he saw that the forward section of the bridge had been torn open. 2 officers lay dead at their stations. Stars were visible through the ragged hole in the hull.
"Oh."
"Emergency seals holding," someone reported. "Barely." Tay pulled himself back to his feet. His arm was broken. His face was bleeding. He did not care. "Status on the Queen's chamber?" Kim pointed at her display with trembling hands. "There, the central mass of the structure. She is inside. If we can get there, we will get there." The Iron Will was dying. Everyone on board knew it. Systems failed one after another. The engines screamed under impossible strain. Ho Sung's voice came over the intercom, weak and pained. "Captain, the fusion core is critical. I have maybe 10 minutes before it fails completely. Can you give me those 10 minutes? I will give you whatever you need." Park looked up from her console. Her face was covered in soot and blood, but her eyes were clear. "Captain, I have a firing solution for our last kinetic round.
One shot."
If I can hit the Queen's chamber directly, do it. The angle is wrong. We need to get closer." Inside the structure itself, Tay understood what she was asking. He turned to the helm. "All ahead full. Take us in." The Iron Will dove toward the organic megastructure. Vrek defenders threw themselves at the ship, crashing against its hull like waves against a rock. The armor buckled and tore. Compartments flooded with fire and vacuum. The ship screamed as it forced its way through the outer layers of the Queen's lair. They broke through into a vast organic chamber. It was like being inside a living thing, surrounded by walls of pulsing flesh and glowing veins. And at the center, suspended in a web of neural tissue, was the Queen. She was enormous. Her body filled the chamber, a mass of tentacles and eyes, and something that might have been a face twisted with ancient hunger. When she saw the human ship, she screamed. The sound was not just audible. It was psychic, pressing against the minds of everyone on board. Tay felt her in his head, trying to break him, trying to make him surrender. He thought of his wife. He thought of his daughters. He thought of the 47 seconds of screaming before silence. Fire! The last kinetic round launched. It was not a simple tungsten slug. It was something humanity had stopped using long ago because the galaxy considered it too terrible. A nuclear warhead wrapped in a shell of depleted uranium, designed to penetrate any armor before detonating. The round crossed the distance between ship and worm. Queen in less than a heartbeat. It struck her directly in the center of her mass, and then there was light. The explosion tore through the Queen's body. Her psychic scream reached a pitch that shattered consoles and burst blood vessels. Across the galaxy, every Vrek connected to the hive mind felt their queen die. The connection that had bound them together for millions of years was severed in an instant. 10,000 ships went silent. They drifted without purpose, their swarm minds empty, their organic systems shutting down one by one. The Vrek, as a coordinated species, ceased to exist. The iron will tumbled through the debris of the Queen's chamber, broken and burning. The explosion had thrown the ship clear of the structure, but there was almost nothing left. The hull was torn open in 100 places. Most systems were offline. The fusion core had finally failed. Tay lay on the deck of the ruined bridge, unable to move. Around him he could hear the groans of the wounded, the soft crying of the dying. The stars were visible through the holes in the hull, cold and distant and beautiful. Park crawled toward him. She was badly injured, her leg twisted at a wrong angle, but she was smiling. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." Tay tried to respond, but his voice would not come. He could only nod. 3 weeks later, Union rescue ships arrived at the origin point. They came expecting to find wreckage and death. They found something else. The iron will was still there. Somehow, impossibly, the ship had survived. Emergency repairs held the hull together. Backup systems provided minimal life support. And inside, 17 crew members still lived. Captain Kong Tay was among them. They pulled him from the wreckage and brought him to the Galactic Council, where every surviving species had gathered. Beings from a dozen worlds filled the great hall. Watching as the human captain was helped to a platform at the center, Elder Torium stood to speak. His voice carried across the chamber, heavy with emotion. 3 months ago, the Galactic Union fell. Our fleets were destroyed. Our worlds were consumed. We faced extinction at the hands of an enemy we could not defeat. He turned to look at Tay. And then humanity came. A species we had rejected. A species we had feared. A species we had called too primitive, too violent, too dangerous to join us. Torium stepped closer to the human captain. "You were right to call us those things. You were right to fear us." Tay's voice was weak but steady. "But you were wrong to think those qualities were weaknesses. They are what saved you." The chamber fell silent. "We came from the void," Tay continued. "We survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed us. We learned that the universe is not kind, that survival must be fought for, that peace is only possible when you are strong enough to defend it." He looked around the hall at the alien faces watching him. The Vrek are gone. The Queen is dead. But there will be other threats. There will always be other threats. His voice hardened. When they come, humanity will be ready. And if the galaxy wants our help, we will give it. Not because you accepted us, but because it is what we do. We protect what we love. We fight for what matters. And we never, ever surrender. Elder Torium bowed his head. "On behalf of the Galactic Union, I offer humanity full membership in our civilization. The quarantine is ended. Your people are welcome among the stars." Tay was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, just slightly. "We accept. But remember this day. Remember what it cost. And remember that the humans who saved you were the same humans you once feared." He paused. "Perhaps some fear is healthy. Perhaps it will remind you to never take peace for granted again." He turned and walked slowly from the chamber, supported by his surviving crew members. Behind him, the galaxy watched in silence. A new age had begun. Humanity had emerged from the void, not as primitives to be contained, but as warriors who had faced extinction and won. The stars that had once seemed so distant were now open to them. And somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, where the Vrek had come from, something stirred. something that had been sleeping for a very long time. Something that had felt the Queen's death scream and wondered what kind of species could have caused it. But that is a story for another time. For now, the Iron Will drifted home, broken but undefeated. Its crew, the 17 survivors of 300, looked out at the stars they had saved.